we now have our third and final panel. So if I can ask the indefatigable Neil to come back to the table. And also Sean is there already. Honourable Minister, I think that we're looking forward to your presence on the Outlook panel. And Ceasar Siwale and Maureen. She's not here. Okay. Goodness me, we've had a Brad becoming a John and now Maureen becoming you. This is a very fascinating session. So thank you very much to everybody for their attention and to all the earlier panelists for the conclusions and their contributions.
Thank you.
And I think we now look forward to drawing the threads together with this distinguished group that Neil is going to moderate.
Thank you. Minister, I think we will have to turn to you first. We've heard a lot today from industry participants about the open dialogue that the government has had with mining companies and how there is a lot of access and things. But over the past year or so, there's been a lot of flip-flopping on policy, particularly with royalties. What guarantees can you give to the investment community, to the miners, that policy now will remain stable? There's obviously an election coming up. How can they be sure that what is now on the table is going to remain?
Neil, thank you very much. I think there's been a lot of course flip-flopping which has taken place in the past, I guess, from September last year when the finance minister made pronouncement on some few of our budget changes. But be as it may, I think, yes, indeed, we've been talking about seeing some stable, policies which will assist the would-be mining industries to plan well, for their future operations and ensure that they retain a fair deal of their, from their investment. And remember, yes, it would be questionable to us whether what we are doing right now will be held in without again changing. But we do realize as a government that we, as a government, would like to see the flow, continue to come of investment to come into our country. And one thing we'll have to do is, I think we saw immediately when we went into this, patch of, I would say, discussions with mining houses, we did realize what was the impact or what was at stake as regards to our economy, as well as to potential investment coming into our country. Now, I would take it for my own self as the minister responsible for mines with the full mandate, given to me by the cabinet. We will endeavor to ensure that our policies are consistent and that the investors who are in the country and those who are coming to the country won't be greeted by a new, abrupt or ad hoc, pronouncement. But be as it may, we will try by all means to continue what we've started, because what we just did recently, we could have achieved it. We could have even avoided it, to come into the main stage, if we were very closely, engaging each other and interacting, proactively, we could have avoided this. But be as it may, it was the lack of that close dialogue, close talking, which could have helped us, avoid that and not go the way we went. Because at the end of the day, the resolution was almost about the same. We came to realize it was taking us anyway, and at the same time, it has serious ramifications for our economy, through the mining process and all that. So, yes, that is a lesson we've learned from usually, you must learn to listen. And if you listen, it could be in your own house. If you're not talking to your wife regularly and you're exchanging views, what would you see? Is the split. And the split in this case is the collapse of the mining industry and subsequently the collapse of our economy. So it's something we've learned from, and we would like to emphasize to the existing mining houses in Zambia, who have been very, very cooperative, and they showed their patience during this discussion. We took about somewhere around about from October. This one was talking this side, another one was talking this side. But at the end of the day, when we brought our heads together and with the full support, which I would like to appreciate here of our president, His Excellency Eddie Galungu, I think it took another 1 month. We hit what we wanted. So we've learned from it. And I feel very strongly that Zambia wants to see the mining industry grow. Zambia does realize that our economy, currently, which is lacking very serious diversification, depends on copper and the mining industry. So to get something out of it, we must do what we should do right in the interest of the people of Zambia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to talk mining. We are here to assure you how Zambia has learned a lesson from the taxation regime. And I would assure you, you won't see anything of that because we've said we'll be talking to the chamber. We've said we'll be talking. Whether the mining house comes along outside their setup with the chamber, we'll still listen. And this is what I will just endeavor to do as long as I remain that. And the government, they've also assured to follow the same route. So give us another chance. We are very much there to ensure that, like I said, to protect your investment and ensure that your investment grows, and at the same time, grow whatever is due for the people of Zambia to benefit, and at the same time sustain the treasury, So please, we are there, and we mean well when we talk about now new taxation regimes. Thank you.
Just to pick up a few things there, you say give us another chance, but there is skepticism within the industry. Given the deficits that the country faces, that in order to raise more revenue, you might have to come back to the mining sector and ask them for more tax. Could you not give a sort of a reassurance that for the next 5 years, for example, or the next 10 years, for example, the royalty system would remain as it is, fixed?
I'll tell you one thing, and this is what I'm saying. I said we trying to ensure that we become a little bit consistent in our fiscal regime, and that will give room to the industry to predict which way to go so that they can as well plan properly, even model their business case to see what will be the 7 years, 10 years from now mean as regards to their operations, which means, Neil, that yes, we're not going to disrupt by coming up with new pronouncements. But the key, issue here is doing something with full dialogue. Don't do something which other people don't know. Where there will be need, of course, it will be them who would come up to us to say, I don't think this thing is working for us, and we'll have to take it to table and discuss it. Or it will be us going to them. So we are saying, nothing will go, without serious, discussion with either party. This is the main thing. But I can't, off the cuff, say 10 years or whatever. What I'm saying is there will be something which could creep in, maybe from the mining industry themselves, to come and say, let's relook at this. We are saying we are very much open to such kind of interventions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chisanga, if I could just come to you, what would you like to see then from the government?
Thank you very much. I would like to see more policy consistency, and I realize there is a history to the lack of consistency that we have experienced in the recent past, and this goes back to a time well before the current government came to power. Together with policy consistency, I think the country could avoid the kind of cash challenges that clearly the government of Zambia has now. So I would like to see measures taken to encourage me to believe that financial stability is just down the road. For example, I would like to see the structure of the Zambian budget change so that the country is not spending 83% of the budget on emoluments for public servants. I'd like to see that figure go down perhaps to something like 40%. And I think this is an area where the Bretton Woods institution, both the World Bank, I think, and IFC as well, might be able to assist the Zambian government with respect to necessary packages that have to be given to civil servants who are retrenched. So I would like to see improvements in the policy area.
Okay, Sean, can I just come to you? You've probably got a slightly different perspective from some of the sort of copper mines there, but I mean, for Zambia to become a leading mining investment, from your perspective, what does it need to do?
Thank you, Neil. Well, it suffices to say, based on the graphs that I showed you earlier, that we probably are something of an anomaly in that we've had a uniquely successful experience investing in Zambia to date. We're also unique in that government is our 25% shareholder, government is represented on the board, and I think the figures show very clearly that it is a model collaboration between a foreign investor and a government. And I can't personally think of too many other examples in almost any country where it has been quite that successful. So within the ambit of the changes in government and the changes in legislation that we have seen in the last 8 years in Zambia, it's been a tremendous place for us to do business. Of course, there have been a couple of examples where some feet have been put slightly in the wrong place, perhaps with unfortunate timing. But underlying that consistently has been a willingness on behalf of government to listen to feedback, to meet, to listen to the input. And as we have seen on a few occasions, the legislation has been changed in order to set matters right and or to make it easier. I think the Honourable Minister hit the nail on the head with the dialogue point, and perhaps there may be some merits in creating formal annual discussions between key mining groups, the Chamber of Mines potentially, held in private under Chatham House rules so that nobody is in the public domain, but simply to help build the trust and the faith between the parties. And I genuinely do believe that the government, and certainly all the ministers that I've met, do mean business and do want to see, as do so many other countries, that a reasonable percentage of the benefits of their minerals end up with the people. And then, of course, simply to say that fiscal stability, I think, is very important. If my facts are not wrong, I think we've had 3 taxation regimes in 8 months, something along those lines. Again, we will get by, we will make it work. We know government wishes to do it, private sector wishes to do it, and hopefully that stability will come soon.
Okay, thank you. Ceasar, can I just come to you now? Most of the people we've heard from this morning are multinational mining companies. Could you speak a bit about the domestic, why we haven't seen any growth of any domestic mining companies within Zambia? I mean, what is it that's stopping that? Is it challenges in terms of financing or perception? How do you see that?
It's actually an interesting point that, I mean, over the last 10 years or so, you've only really seen then the emergence of sort of an entrepreneurial mindset in Zambia. Prior to that, that sort of approach was very limited. Mostly the focus was on job creation or actually working for a multinational or working for the state, if you go further back. But during that period, during the last 10 years, we have seen more Zambians venturing into becoming business owners. I think unfortunate for the mining sector, which were probably the last assets that were sold by government, that focus has continued to focus on working with the multinational as opposed to some of the new Zambian owners of concessions that are coming on board in terms of finding ways, how do you help address some of the challenges they might face. And compounded with that is some of the challenges that everybody here has been referring to, which are probably enhanced for Zambia. So definitely very difficult to get access to capital, limited depth for financing domestically. And I think without the international relationships for a lot of the local guys that were holding the concessions, they're faced with even further challenges with where the concession has got a finite life to it. And so once it exceeded the 2-year time frame, effectively you lose half of that concession. So to match that and build in, by the time you build international relations to get access to international capital, you find actually the tail end of the life of the concession, making it very difficult for it to be bankable. And then what has effectively happened in Zambia is concessions over the last 10 years have been traded almost as title deeds. And so you typically find that there's a very high price on the concession as though they're selling a piece of real estate, as opposed to that there's a lot of work that actually needs to be done on that concession to determine whether it's bankable or not. Over the last 3 to 5 years, though, we are seeing more Zambians that are emerging, trying to address ways that this challenge can be overcome. And with us, our business in Zambia, which is a boutique financial advisory business, we have been building capacity within our firm and also working with some of the international groups that we've worked with in the past. So we'd anticipate probably in the coming years that you would see more Zambian mine owners coming forward, probably eventually past the bankable stage, partnering with some international groups. But there are certain reforms probably that needs to occur to allow the Zambian, the domestic holders of the concessions to become mine owners in the future, I think.
Okay, thank you. Minister, could I just come back to you just on the royalty system? I mean, it seems that Zambia is one of the only countries in the world with this 2-tier rate. I mean, do you think that really is a good idea? I mean, or do you think it needs further reform?
Look, like this morning, I think that was posed to one of the panelists here, but I just want to put the government side to it. Yes, it could be the only country where it has come into being, but remember, that hasn't yet been promulgated. It's got to go, like it was highlighted, it'll have to go to Parliament. And in the process, we are just trying to assure the investors that we are open for discussion. And anything we discuss positively and we hear the other side of the investors and also the government, justification for that. We are open. That is a proposal. It has been pushed forward, and we are not saying that is going through and through. If it was the case, then it wouldn't even been tabled or going to be tabled into Parliament, because this thing has got to be discussed, and we are open, for discussion. I heard sentiments from First Quantum, and I took that very, very seriously, and maybe that will be the opening point for our discussion as we get back into Zambia. So, yes, it is being proposed, and it's there, but we are yet to engage our colleagues as we get back into Zambia, because it was just done about 2 weeks or 1.5 weeks ago that it was brought into public domain, and that it will be moving forward. So we are very, very open to that.
Thank you for that. And what might be done to bring a resolution to the discussion or the debate over VAT that's owed to the mining companies? I mean, what could be done there to settle this dispute?
The VAT? And again, you would see that the government is willing to normalize the working relationship, knowing too well that for the mining houses to to succeed in their operations, there are a few things we've got to re-examine. Of course, that forms part of the flip-flop you talked about, Neil. Yes, we flip-flopped. Why did we do that? There's nothing, we shouldn't feel ashamed about it. We went back, we saw, we listened, you know. And I, for one, as the minister responsible for mines, I'm the entry point for all these complaints, and I make sure, because at the end of the day, I put up the cap, you know, of the mining houses to go and defend when it makes sense in cabinet. And I went flat out to defend this VAT issue. And this VAT issue, after I defended, explained, shared the concerns of the mining houses, and some mining houses had their own direct, you know, entry into the finance ministers or to some other, offices which were directly involved with this. We decided, yes, there were serious hardships in the mining houses in order to recover their reimbursement, it should go through some other channel. So we decided it wasn't working, and it wasn't working. So we reverted, we rescinded the SI. So it is not there. As we speak, that requirement which was tabled, which was put forward to the mining houses in order to qualify to have their VAT refunded, is no longer there. That's also an indication of where we are going. It could have been something we could have done better, right there and then. But the main purpose of that, again, the government, their own understanding, and that understanding was a perception, maybe, alluding to the fact that there could have been some mischanneling of the documentation, or the documentations once they crossed the border not being verified correctly or whatever. So that was, again, there was a full team which were put up to investigate and just see the process it goes through in order, once they cross the border, and know that. And nothing was found otherwise to say, yes, there's some irregularities. So we had to reverse that, and it's no longer there.
Okay, thank you. One of the more interesting points I think that was made this morning was about transparency, and how for the ordinary Zambian it's very difficult for them to see how profitable or otherwise the industry is. I just wonder if I could throw this open to the panel just to discuss perhaps how you could make the industry more transparent. I mean, is there not a case perhaps for the government making publicly available the shares that it owns in the various mining assets across the company, and listing those on the local stock market, so people could then look in and actually have a greater visibility on how these assets are performing? I don't know what the panel thinks about trying to improve local knowledge of what's actually happening in the industry. Sean?
I'm happy to comment there, Neil. Absolutely vital for that to happen, and I think the first ever Zambian Emerald Summit that we hosted approximately 2 years ago, and the starting to publish some of the key performance criteria, have really helped to get rid of some of the ridiculous myths that have existed in the colored gemstone business. And sometimes really simple solutions can be tremendously effective. And from my perspective, I think one such possibility would be, and this is not so much something that falls to government, as fellows in the mining sector, it is potentially something that we ourselves could do too. But that would be to have a very simple website that simply publishes the performance figures for each of the protagonists operating inside of Zambia, in a very simple way, to show what's the total revenue, what is the production, whether it's carats or tons of copper, whatever the case may be, and then the breakdown of the mineral royalty taxes and the corporation tax, and if any, dividends that have been paid either to government or to ZCCMIH. That's not a very complicated table. It fits probably on one page, and it's updated for each year, and I just think it would help people understand what's actually happening in the industry and to have one place that they can go to get the facts. And ZITI, the EITI, Zambian version, obviously is moving in that direction, and I think there is improving documentation coming out.
Does that idea have any attraction, Minister?
Yes, indeed. We, as a government, we've put up some monitoring mechanisms. Some are under development right now to just look across the value chain. You know, there are two initiatives. One is being, initiated by the Zambia Revenue Authority, which will put up this monitoring mechanism across the entire value chain, and it will, at each and every given point in time, you will be allowed a view, access. And you can know for whatever purpose you would like to use the data, you can use it. But there will be one entry point, and everybody will see at any given point in time what KCM is intending to, as produced, and after the processing, how much has been processed, and for export, how much cathodes or whatever copper is going, which will also help the bookkeepers, the Zambia Revenue Authority, to very, very closely know what is it that went out, what is it that was produced. And to enhance this, somebody talked about the launch we had 2 weeks ago, funded by the European Union. Again, is a monitoring process based only on production. A system which will help us to ensure that whatever is produced at each mine will be aware of the data. The Zambian people, their main concern is not knowing what is going on around, and then they are gripped with this, wrong perception about what's going on around the mining, and hence the myth, like what Sean has alluded to. Once we start doing that, we'll be in a position to avail information and correct data as regards to proceeds, how much copper or byproducts from Kansanshi on gold was exported, and how much money did we make. We have started having that information, and it's a question which is asked most of the time in Parliament. We have got data. All what we need now is start to make sure that's credible data we can work with and project our proceeds, or otherwise what the mines are making. But as regards to our responsibility, obligation to the people of Zambia, yes, the ITI has just come up very well, and we've started trying to create these databases and information and format it in a way where we'll be sharing with our people. We must be accountable of how much did we earn from KCM, how much did we, that is our responsibility, and we're trying to go forward and grow the confidence, in the eyes of the Zambian people, that we can tell them we are not spending carelessly a penny we earn for them. That is the main worry, and that's where, if you see someone raised, they can come from there, because the government is not revealing exactly or not putting to use what is being earned. Mr. Chekwe here, he talked about, spending a lot of money on emoluments. Yes, the World Bank, in their most recent brief on the economic performance of the Zambian government, which was about 2 weeks ago, they highlighted. But remember, this is a big, big, big problem, because if the growing or raising of your salaries or whatever started long time back, it's very difficult to just come and stop it from there. We will have to just stop increasing, but it's something which can't be done overnight. We'll just stop like we did. We've frozen the wages for the civil servants for the past 2 years. They've never had a wage. It's because we do realize how much impact that has been, affected onto our coffers. So we have started, and we are trying to just be open. And we've told them, gentlemen, this is the situation. And ladies, we can't do much than what we are doing. So yes, we are trying to be transparent. And one thing is, this also links to corruption. We want to ensure that corruption is something we'll never even tolerate at any point in time. Our late President, Michael Chiofia-Sata, he put it straight. Whether you are a minister or whether you are a T-boy down level, found in any of those, you are gone. So we are trying to make sure we protect the economy. We protect this, resource for the people of Zambia, and not to be wasted through some dubious means or unethical behaviors. No, we are not going for that. Thank you.
Thanks. Sean, did you want to come back in? Did you have a...
Just a quick example of how making that sort of data available to the public, to analysts and journalists, helps to highlight immediately problems in a particular sector where the benefit may not be flowing back to the country. Kagem Emerald Mine today represents 80% of the value of gemstones exported, emeralds that is, exported from Zambia, 80% by value. But we represent only 50% of the number of carats. So our exports leave the country at around $4.50 per carat, but the other 50% is leaving the country at around $1.25 per carat. So those figures highlight very quickly where goods are not being sold at the appropriate international values, thereby depriving the country of royalties and/or taxation.
Thanks. No, please.
Yeah, you see, on the emeralds, the people of Zambia were always asking, why are the emeralds being sold? Where are they going? We went and talked to Gemfields, and we said, look, I think it's high time we started bringing the auctioning back into the country so that people will see what is happening. And today, for the past 3 years, they were more than willing. Auctions today are conducted in the country, and it's a public knowledge how much is fetched and what is being done to whatever the money is. So we are auctioning the emeralds within the country, which has grown confidence to the people of Zambia. They are seeing each auction how much money is being made. And when we make more, then they see, no, then there wasn't anything suspicious about it, but it's just a matter of trying to clear their minds. These are things they would like to see. And that's why we are saying we do provide data in Parliament as regards to what we are receiving or process we are getting from the mines,
Okay. Ceasar, did you want to come in?
I think it's interesting, some of the points that are being made here, but I also think we have to go further back to when the rest of the economy was being privatized in the early 1990s. And I think the then government, what they did is effectively overnight create a robust capital market, at least defined on paper and the regulations that surround it. And the intent there, to the question that Neil has asked, was how do you provide the citizen direct access to that particular asset that has been privatized to a third party. And in most of those cases, it was to a multinational. And effectively, that's how the stock exchange was born in Zambia, unlike how it has evolved in most parts of the world. And by and large, for those that came through, although initially the process was slow, but by and large, that story has been relatively successful. And you can see individual Zambians that have done very well for themselves, whether it's with a brewery, whether it's with Lafarge or Ilovo. Then in the late 1990s, early 2000s, when the mobile phone companies came on board, one of the conditions in their licenses was that at some point, for them to continue holding that license, they would have to offer stock on the capital market, so Zambians got full visibility. They're the ones who are helping those assets grow, and as that's you have transparency. And to that, you've since had Airtel, then Celtel, come on the market. That was the most successful IPO on the Zambian Stock Exchange. It was a $200 million offer. It was 5 times oversubscribed. Both local and international capital came through for that. And more recently, in particular last year, the Minister of Finance was mentioning that the commercial banks have to do likewise, and we don't know where they are in that process. But for some reason, the mining sector has always been secret, and there's been a lot of talk from the public and how can they participate directly into the mining companies. With one of the mines, in particular FQM, we have tried to be creative in the market and see how do we give Zambians access to that particular stock, but not just restricted to Kansanshi, but everything else that they're doing in Zambia. And we did this 3-4 years ago by doing what we coined the Zambia Depository Receipt, which is basically the inverse, so to give Zambians access to the full spectrum of what FQM had to offer. So I think from a public perspective, whether it's through a website, whether it's through dialogue in Parliament, I think you're dealing with a population to a large extent that's very skeptical of the mining sector. They don't fully understand it. It's a lot more complex. Groups like Action Aid and others don't necessarily help with that process. So there's always an air of suspicion. And I think in some fashion, we need to find, not only with the sale done by ZCCM, which is a welcome development, but an investment holding vehicle. MTN tried to do an investment holding vehicle structure in Zambia to list MTN a couple of weeks ago, literally, and that was rejected by the public because they wanted to hold the stock directly into the company. And so I think in some fashion, the idea of the website is great, but I think to a large extent, the citizen wants to receive the annual report in his hands, go to an AGM and ask questions. Today, they get that information on FQM, but they get the whole full spectrum of FQM, the same quality of information that a shareholder in Canada receives. So I think it's how do we motivate that level of transparency across the whole sector. I think that will make a big difference in terms of how the public perceives the sector and some of the misunderstandings that are there in it.
Okay, Chisanga, did you want to make a quick point? And then we're just running over time, so I'm just conscious of...
I'll be very quick. Transparency is extremely important to First Quantum Minerals, but I would take the opportunity to agree with both Sean and the Minister. The demand for transparency is fueled largely by lack of information in the general population, and also, as Ceasar has pointed out, by a history of the mining companies themselves. Prior to nationalization, when companies were actually initially private companies, these companies supported football teams, they had welfare centers, they had feeding centers, and that created an expectation in the population that mining companies will do certain things. So the expectation for mining companies is higher than the expectation for other players in the economy. But going back to transparency, when First Quantum Minerals started Kansanshi mines, a budget was of course drawn up aimed to indicate when Kansanshi mines, a First Quantum subsidiary, would be able to pay taxes. And under that budget, the expectation was by 2010, First Quantum Minerals as Kansanshi mines would be able to pay taxes. In fact, because of efficiencies and the copper price, profitability came much earlier. It was First Quantum Minerals that alerted the government to the possibility that they are likely to make a profit and they are likely to pay taxes. As I recall, the government was quite skeptical about this. Not First Quantum. It was a government that was basically saying, are you sure this is going to happen? And First Quantum Minerals said, yes, it is going to happen. And by 2006-2007 fiscal year, First Quantum handed a check to the government of Zambia for $90.5 million, completely unexpected, the best kind of windfall.
Okay, thank you. Right, we are just running over time, but I think it'd be a shame if we didn't just take one question from the audience. So if there's anyone that has something to ask my panelists to talk, could they just raise their hand now quickly? Is there someone at the back there? Yeah. And then once we've had this question, we'll wrap up.
This question, hi, sorry, I'm Desnay Marcy from Africa Matters Limited. This question is directed to Your Excellency, Honourable Minister. Please could you provide some information on at what stage Zambia's independent power producer program is at and how that might benefit mining? Thank you.
No, sorry.
Sorry, did you not hear the question?
No, could you repeat it, please?
Okay, I was asking at what stage is Zambia's independent power producer program right now and how will that benefit mining?
How is the independent power producer program and how is that affecting mining?
Thank you very much. Zambia has liberalized the generation subsector. And as such, we have opened up for IPPs to come into Zambia. And currently, we've had experiences a little slower trickling in of, independent power producers, just due to the fact that the tariffs are not yet very ironed out. But very soon, as we've got now the guide in place, and we're trying to indeed ensure that we start migrating into, cost-reflective tariffs, so that we can just entice the IPPs to come in, and also help the ongoing, distributors to just see how they can sustain their operations and their maintenance. So we are very open. You can come in and we'll just do what we can do for you to, enter into power generation. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to bring this panel to a close. Thank you, Minister, for answering those questions so forthrightly, and thank you to my other panelists as well. And I think it's now a break for lunch, so thank you very much.